Welcome to Facts Radio, your journey through history begins here. In this episode, we explore the life of Leonardo da Vinci, Renaissance genius and timeless innovation. Over the next hour we will walk beside a mind that refused to stay inside its own century, a man who sketched flying machines while others still feared comets, who dissected human veins by candlelight so he could paint the soul's light by daylight. Close your eyes and let the centuries peel away like wet fresco. You will smell the walnut oil in his pigments, feel the tremor in his stylus as it scratches Milanese air, taste the iron tang of ambition that kept him awake while all of Florence slept. Chapter 1: A Child Named Lion. Spring, 1452. The Arno Valley exhales after winter, vine sweating sap into Tuscan soil. In the hamlet of Anciano a hawk stalls on a thermal above a sandstone tower, watching the world the way Leonardo will one day watch it, head tilted, calculating. Inside the tower, 16-year-old Caterina clenches the bedsheet, linen soaked with amniotic possibility. Midwife's hands, calloused from olive branches, guide a boy-child into candlelight. His first sound is not a cry but a curious hush, as though he already listens for the hidden music inside breath itself. They name him Leonardo, lion strong, the valley's unofficial prince of bastards. Imagine the tension the first time his father, Ser Piero da Vinci, a notary with ink-stained nails, lifts the infant toward the window so the son can inspect the heir he cannot legally claim. Light stripes the baby's face, the father sees his own sharp nose, but also something alien, eyes too alert, as though they already inventory the world. Ser Piero's heart shifts like a compass needle that has just discovered true north, yet the law forbids the needle to settle. He tucks the child into his satchel of contracts, carries him across vine-terraced hills to the family compound in Vinci, and deposits him in the lap of his grandfather Antonio, a man who once catalogued every bushel of grain in Tuscany and now, at 80, will catalogue every flicker of genius in this boy. Childhood smells of new-cut fig wood and the oily smoke of terracotta lamps. At night Leonardo lies awake listening to the mill wheel moan outside the stone house, a sound like a giant slowly chewing time. He asks questions no one has asked before. Why does the moon change shape but not weight? How does a bird turn without pushing against anything solid? His uncle Francesco, a farmer who can read the alphabet of hoofprints, fashions him a kite from barley straw and parchment scraps. When the kite finally lifts, Leonardo feels his own ribs tug skyward. He will later write that a bird is an instrument that works according to mathematical law, but tonight it is only magic, and the string burns his palm like a promise. By age 7 he is sketching on walls with charcoal stolen from the hearth, hawks, river eddies, the wrinkled map of his grandfather's hand. Each line is a question disguised as an answer. One afternoon he watches a falcon land on a crenellation and studies how the wings fold the way hope folds into memory. He climbs the battlement, arms out, coat billowing, and for 3 terrifying seconds believes he can reverse the transaction, fall upward into sky. A servant yanks him back by the belt, stones clatter 40 feet below. It's hard to believe, but that aborted flight seeds every flying machine he will ever draw, the parachute, the ornithopter, the helical air screw spinning like a dream that refuses to wake. At 12 he is apprenticed to Andrea del Verrocchio in Florence, city of whispers and wool wealth. The boy walks 50 miles barefoot beside mule carts, feet blistered, eyes wide. When the city's marble facades first rise into view, he mistakes them for frozen lightning. Verrocchio's workshop smells of egg tempera and molten bronze, hammers sing contrapuntal to the cathedral bells. Leonardo learns to grind lapis until it bleeds ultramarine, to paint flesh so translucent you can feel pulse beneath. He also learns that every brushstroke is a betrayal, reality reduced to pigment, and he vows to betray better than anyone has ever betrayed. One grey afternoon Verrocchio assigns him an angel in a baptism scene. The master has already painted Jesus, the apprentice must supply the heavenly attendant. Leonardo mixes lead tin yellow with a whisper of arsenic green, adds a smile no scripture authorized, and places the angel's foot so lightly on the riverbank that grass does not bend. When Verrocchio sees the panel he sets down his brush forever, murmuring, "He is risen, and I am eclipsed." From that moment the workshop belongs to a boy who has not yet shaved, and Florence begins to gossip in the dialect of envy. Chapter 2: The City That Whispered in Symmetry. Florence, 1469. Dawn bleeds over the Arno, turning river into liquid copper. Leonardo, now 17, crosses the Ponte Vecchio, boots clicking on butcher scraps. He carries a notebook bound by shoemaker's twine, pages already swollen with sketches of tendon and cloud. Each morning he joins the human alphabet that spells out the Renaissance, dyers, bankers, poets, prostitutes, all rubbing shoulders like pigments on a palette. The city itself is a machine whose gears are guilds. Leonardo intends to take the back off and watch the gears kiss. In the Medici gardens he hears Marsilio Ficino speak of Plato's world soul, the idea that beauty is simply proportion married to light. Leonardo writes the phrase in mirror script, letters walking backward, because his left hand finds reverse easier than forward. He begins to measure everything, the distance between a lover's pupils, the spiral of a snail shell, the pause between thunder and lightning. Numbers crawl over his sketches like ants that have learned geometry. It's hard to believe, but he is inventing a new way of seeing, part artist, part engineer, part necromancer, raising dead facts to dance. Commissioned to paint a Madonna for a wool merchant, he persuades the man's pregnant wife to sit, then spends an hour listening to her heartbeat through a rolled parchment tube. He wants to paint not just the mother but the sound that cradles the child. When the panel is finished, viewers swear they can hear a faint lub-dub if they press ears to the wood. The merchant triples the fee. Leonardo spends it on silver point pens and 33 larks he releases from the window because he prefers song to coin. At night he sneaks into Santa Maria Nuova Hospital, bribes a monk with a sketch of wings, and dissects corpses by candle that gutters like a dying prayer. The first incision along the inner arm reveals a blue river beneath skin. He follows it to the heart and finds a room the color of dusk. He writes, all the veins submit themselves to the heart as soldiers to their captain, then draws the heart for times, each view rotated as though it beats in slow motion. The smell of formaldybum and sanctity clings to his cloak. Dogs follow him home, howling at the death scent that travels like an invisible cape. One winter the Arno freezes. Children skate on mirror ice that reflects their faces as cherubs. Leonardo measures the angle at which cracks propagate and sketches a bridge that would span the river in a single arch of polished stone. The city fathers laugh. Such a bridge would require the mountains themselves to kneel. 25 years later he will draft the same bridge for the Sultan in Constantinople, and for centuries after that engineers will finally build it in Norway, proving that ideas are patient glacier moving an inch a century. He meets Lorenzo de' Medici, the Magnificent, who tosses him a lyre shaped like a horse skull strung with silver. Leonardo tunes it to human breath and improvises a song so sweet that Lorenzo's pet leopard lies down and purrs like domestic thunder. The patron pats the boy's shoulder, saying, "You tune the world as easily as others tune lutes." But Leonardo notices how Lorenzo's eyes calculate utility the way merchants weigh wool, and he feels the first chill of patronage, warm on the skin, cold on the soul. Imagine the tension when he is accused of sodomy along with 3 other young men. The anonymous note dropped into the tamburoed box claims he had kept company with Jacopo Saltarelli, a painter's model whose beauty is itself a crime. Leonardo spends 2 months waiting for the noose of justice to tighten, sketching feverishly, hangman's knots, the anatomy of fear in dilated pupils, a flying machine that could lift him above the city's gossip. The charges are dropped, perhaps because the Medici intervene, perhaps because the accuser is swallowed by silence. Whatever the reason, Leonardo walks out of the Bargello prison with the taste of iron in his mouth and a vow to never again be trapped by anyone's story but his own. Chapter 3, The Horse That Never Galloped. Milan, 1482. Fog coils around Lombardy like a serpent made of river steam and cathedral incense. Leonardo arrives at the city gates riding not a horse but reputation itself, carrying a silver lyre and a letter to Ludovico Sforza that promises war machines sweeter than music. The streets smell of damp wool and pig iron, canals reflect Gothic spires as if the city carries a second, drowned Milan on its back. He rents a workshop beside the cathedral yard and begins to draft the largest equestrian statue ever conceived, bronze enough to outlast empires, a monument to Ludovico's father Francesco. The Duke wants memory cast in metal, Leonardo wants memory to breathe. For 12 years the horse lives only on paper, muscles inked with the same precision he once gave to human veins. He dissects dead stallions, measures the expansion of their nostrils when they scent mares, calculates the torque of galloping hooves. He designs a casting method that will pour 90 tons of bronze in a single breath, molds nested like matryoshka dolls of clay and wax. Artisans whisper that he is mad, bronze on that scale will crack the earth. Leonardo merely smiles and sketches a smaller note: obstacles do not bend me, they teach me the flex of time. Meanwhile Milan teaches him Power's grammar. He stages festivals for Ludovico, planets that descend on ropes of silk, a mechanical lion that opens its chest to scatter lilies, an orchestra where dancers trigger hydraulic organs hidden under floorboards. Courtiers gasp, spies from Venice take notes. Leonardo watches their pupils dilate and learns that wonder is a currency that never devalues. He pockets their all-the-way accountants' pocket coins, spending it later on pigments and parchment. He meets Cecilia Gallerani, Ludovico's mistress, 17 and luminous with intelligence. She keeps pet weasels whose winter coats turn ermine white. Leonardo paints her holding one, the animal's body curved like a living comma punctuating her thoughts. In the portrait light slides across her face the way rumors slide across court, soft, then sudden. She tells him, "You paint what I think, not what I am," and he realizes that every portrait is a collaboration with time, a negotiation between sitter and eternity. Years later, when Ludovico marries someone else, Cecilia will clutch this painting like a shield against oblivion. Imagine the tension the day the French army camps outside Milan. Bronze meant for the horse is requisitioned for cannon. Leonardo watches workers tip 90 tons of ingots into furnaces that glow like miniature hells. The horse, once ready to leap into legend, becomes instead the barrels that will shoot holes in legends yet unmade. He stands by the furnace until the heat peels the skin of his face into redness, feeling ambition evaporate into gun smoke. That night he writes, "The time will come when bronze will weep for having become death instead of art, a prophecy that echoes across every century that chooses war over wonder." Yet even defeat has wings. As French troops breach the walls, Leonardo retreats to his workshop and opens a chest no key has ever turned. Inside, drawings of flying machines, diving suits, tanks like giant turtles. He had hoped to gift them to Ludovico, instead he will gift them to the future, a future that may be kinder than dukes. He loads the pages onto a mule and exits Milan at dusk, fog swallowing the city behind him like a stage curtain dropped too soon. The unfinished horse remains a hole in the ground, but inside that cavity dreams migrate, waiting for archaeologists to one day measure the negative space where genius once tried to stand. Chapter 4: The Woman with the Knowing Smile. Florence again, 1500. The city has grown older, harder, like a beautiful woman who has learned the price of beauty. Leonardo returns with a beard now silvered by Milanese fog, eyes carrying the weight of cannons. He sets up workshop in the monastery of Santissima Annunziata and begins to paint a portrait commissioned by Francesco del Giocondo. His wife, Lisa, 24, recently lost a child, smile folded like a letter never mailed. The commission is ordinary, the result will be anything but. Day after day Lisa climbs the creaking stairs, veil damp from river mist. She sits on a wooden chair while Leonardo adjusts curtains to trap light the way falconers trap hawks. He plays music, lutes, reciters of Dante, trying to tease the corners of her mouth into that elusive equilibrium between lament and laughter. He talks to her about flight, about how birds are just tail feathers to negotiate sorrowful winds. She listens, and her smile begins to grow the way moonlight grows, imperceptibly, until suddenly the whole room is ocean. He paints the background from memory of valleys seen while fleeing Milan, roads that spiral like thought, rivers that vanish into geological time. Each rock is a grief he could not cast in bronze, each bridge a promise that collapsed. He layers oils so thin that light passes through centuries, skin translucent as regret. It's hard to believe, but he carries this panel everywhere, Rome, France, like a mirror that flatters and accuses. He never delivers it to the patron. Some say he fell in love with the idea that a woman's face could house the universe's ambiguity, others that he heard his own mother's voice in her silence. Meanwhile he dissects more corpses, mapping the facial nerves that make a smile possible. He discovers that happiness is a tug-of-war between muscles pulling up and muscles pulling down, and he paints that war into Lisa's lips. He writes, "The soul does not dwell in the brain alone but diffuses through the body like honey in warm milk, and you can taste that sweetness in the way her hands rest, relaxed yet ready to clench." The portrait becomes a diary of human contradiction, innocence that has read every book of experience, serenity that has negotiated with despair. Years pass. The panel travels in a padded trunk while Leonardo walks battlements consulting on war, sketches maps of river diversions, designs costumes for masks where gods descend on cotton cloud machines. Yet every night he unwraps the painting and touches her cheek with a brush loaded only with solvent, lifting a micron of pigment here, adding a breath of lake blue there. He is not painting Lisa anymore, he is painting time's effect on longing. One dawn he writes beneath a sketch of swirling water, "Where the spirit does not work with the hand, there is no art, only the Mona Lisa works when I am absent." Imagine the tension decades later, in the chateau of Amboise, as the aging master lies dying, the portrait propped against a trunk so she can watch him cross the final valley. They say he confessed to King Francis, "I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have," yet his eyes stray to Lisa and soften, as if to add, "except perhaps this once." When breath leaves his body, the smile remains, on wood, in memory, across centuries, an enigma that refuses to resolve, reminding us that genius is not solving mystery but gifting it to the rest of us, a kite whose string we still feel tugging even though the flyer has long since let go. Chapter 5, The Heart That Drew Itself. Rome, 1513. Dawn peels over the eternal city like guilt peeling from a forgery. Leonardo enters through the Porta del Popolo behind a mule train of luggage and legend, his beard is now river white, eyes still quicksilver. Pope Leo X, a Medici bred on marble and marble-cold calculation, has invited the great inventor to the Vatican's honeycomb halls. The invitation smells of incense and trap. Leonardo carries only a small chest, notebooks bound in calfskin, a lock of hair perhaps Caterina's, and the Mona Lisa wrapped in linen like a sleeping child he refuses to wake. Imagine the tension the first time he stands in the Sistine corridor while Raphael, all swagger and youth, strides past trailing wet paint. Their eyes lock, one man painting heaven on ceilings, the other mapping heaven's machinery in margins. Michelangelo, somewhere below in scaffolding sweat, mutters that Leonardo's designs are dreams for cowards who fear the chisel's weight. Leonardo hears the insult, feels it lodge beneath the ribs beside Milanese cannon smoke, yet he only notes, envy is the shadow cast by greatness upon greatness, and returns to drafting a hydraulic organ for the Pope's garden. He dissects in the Ospedale di Santo Spirito, stealthy as a priest stealing wine. The city forbids human dissection, the church tolerates curiosity only when it flatters doctrine. Still, he slips the surgeon a ruby and walks out with the arm of a hanged thief, veins laced like purple ivy. Under candle that gutters in the shape of a question mark he traces blood's path from fingertip to heart and discovers the four chambers open and close like bellows feeding a cosmic hearth. He writes, "The heart is a furnace where spirit is smelted," and sketches a valve that will not be surgically replicated until 1960. But Rome is a fever of patronage and poison. The Pope wants toys, mechanical lions that roar Latin psalms, lutes that play themselves while cardinals gamble. Leonardo obliges, yet each night he climbs the Janiculum hill and listens to the city's million heartbeats syncopate below. He feels his own heart misfire, an arrhythmia born of mercury fumes and postponed dreams. In the distant St. Peter's Dome, still unfinished, gapes like a skull contemplating resurrection. He draws self-portraits in red chalk, the face a geographical map of regret, brows like storm fronts, lips parted as if to ask forgiveness for every invention that never left the page. One autumn afternoon he witnesses a bull executed in the piazza for the crime of goring a noble. The animal's heart is cut out still beating and held aloft, steam curling into cruciform shape. Children clap, ladies faint, Leonardo sketches the spasming muscle in 3 positions, noting how blood arcs in diminishing parabolas until silence wins. That night he dreams of the bronze horse molten again, its sternum bursting into cannon mouths. He wakes gasping, tastes iron, and decides Rome is a machine whose gears grind men into relics. He pens a letter to the King of France offering services where art is loved more than spectacle, and feels the city's doors begin to close behind him like eyelids weary of vision. Before departure he visits the Colosseum at dawn. Mist pools in corridors where gladiators once heard eternity echo in crowd roar. He stands in the arena's center, arms out, feeling the ellipse concentrate centuries of bloodlust into a hush. A kestrel lands on a broken arch and they regard each other, two engineers of flight, one successful, one still apprenticed to gravity. He leaves without looking back, but in a margin he draws the arena transformed, wooden wings attached to marble ribs, spectators lifted into sky until violence becomes impossible. The caption reads, "Only by rising above ruins do we cease to build them." Chapter 6, The River That Flows Uphill. Amboise, 1516. Loire Valley unwraps itself in vineyards and chateau stone the color of old music. King Francis I, 18, golden, voracious for glory, gifts Leonardo the manor of Clou, a brick womb warmed by winter sun and royal favor. The Italian exile arrives with chests of memory and a household of pupils including Francesco Melzi, the dark-eyed son of a Milanese noble, who will become heir to 5,000 pages of miracle. They cross the Alps in snow, mules slip, ink freezes in bottles, yet Leonardo sketches the avalanche's curve and predicts its path to within a yard, saving the caravan. It's hard to believe, but even winter obeys when observed by a mind that measures pressure and pity equally. At Clou he is free, yet freedom tastes of iron and deadline. The king calls him first painter, engineer, and architect but also demands party tricks, a wooden lion that walks into the banquet hall and sprays lilies from its chest, a submarine to sink English ships, a city where canals circulate perfume instead of sewage. Leonardo designs them all, but each night he returns to the underground studio lit by mirrors reflecting candlelight until noon. There he pages through blueprints of the uterus, the flight of starlings, the spiral of water falling upon itself like history drunk on repetition. He invents the first vertical sawmill, a river diverted through paddles that drive a 90-degree gear, logs sliding uphill as if gravity signed a truce. Workers cheer, bishops mutter that only demons make water climb. Leonardo merely watches, remembering the Arno's current that once carried away his childhood paper boat. He writes, "Nature is conquered by obeying her," and sketches beside it a heart valve shaped like a river eddy, proof that every machine is merely blood dreaming outside the body. Francis visits often, sometimes in disguise, more often in splendor. They speak in a mix of Italian and adolescent French, hand-sketching air. The king asks if immortality is possible. Leonardo answers by showing him a lens that concentrates moonlight hot enough to scorch parchment. "We can hold the moon," he says, "but not the hand that holds it." Francis, drunk on wine and philosophy, kneels and kisses the master's sleeve, an act that will later be painted as a deathbed scene though it happened years before, propaganda in advance of grief. Health declines like a sunset nobody can arrest. His right hand trembles, lines wander. He teaches himself to draw left-handed in mirror script, letters walking backward toward birth. Melzi reads aloud the old notebooks, voice shaking, descriptions of lungs ballooning with air like lovers sighing, of blood that runs faster when thinking of the beloved. Leonardo listens, eyes closed, and sees Caterina's face dissolving into Lisa's, then into his own mother's, a palimpsest of women who taught him that mystery begins in the body and ends in memory. One summer evening he and Melzi walk along the Loire. Swallows stitch sky to water, the river smells of melted pewter. Leonardo speaks of a dream at a bridge spun from spider silk spanning continents, carrying not armies but ideas, blueprints, lullabies, recipes for bread that never molds. Such a bridge, he whispers, would make war obsolete, for who would burn what connects his own heart to the enemy's? Melzi, crying, records the words. Behind them the chateau windows glow like cathedral glass, ahead the river curves into darkness that smells of future rain. They stand there until stars reflect in the water and it becomes impossible to tell illumination from reflection, a moment Leonardo captures in a quick sketch titled, Night Learning to be Light. Chapter 7, The Wings That Arrived Too Late. Autumn 1518. Leaves fall in spirals identical to the flight plans he once drew for helical air screws. Leonardo's legs swell, lungs gurgle, the river inside him flooding banks. Yet he still drafts, a parachute of linen stiffened by reed, a clock powered by pendulums that tick like hesitant hearts, a city of concentric canals where waste flows outward and clean water inward, an early blueprint for utopia. He calls the city Renaissance, not as nostalgia but as prophecy. Birth must be perpetual. He calculates population density, airflow, the angle of winter sun on nursery walls, as though logistics could defeat grief. He summons Francis and shows him a model glider large enough for a man, wings sewn by seamstresses who once embroidered royal sleeves. The king's eyes widen like cathedral doors. They carry it to the terrace above the Loire. Wind whips cloaks into banners of ambition. Leonardo, frail, cannot sit astride, so Melzi volunteers. The pupils haul the glider to the precipice. For a heartbeat the only sound is river breathing below. Melzi pushes off, wood creaks, linen billows, then drops like a prayer that doubts its own words, crashing into reeds 10 feet below. Francis laughs nervously. Leonardo kneels, checking Melzi's bones, eyes wet with a sorrow older than language. In his notebook he writes, "Flight is born in the crash, not the soar," a maxim every orphaned invention learns eventually. Night after night he revises wing angles, adds a movable tail, sketches pulleys that translate wrist motion into feather tip. He calculates lift-to-drag ratios with numbers that anticipate modern aerodynamics by 4 centuries. Yet each dawn brings fever that paints his cheeks the color of dried poppies. He dreams of flying over Milan Cathedral, seeing the bronze horse galloping across clouds, Manet streaming molten starlight. He wakes gasping, hand clutching air as if to catch the reins of a future that refuses to be saddled. He dictates to Melzi, "The bird is an instrument working according to mathematical law. This law is within the reach of man. From the bosom of your astonishment, a wing will rise." The sentence will later be quoted by aviation pioneers who never know it was spoken by a dying man to a crying boy in a candle-bleeding room. Outside, October wind rattles shutters like applause that comes too late. One November dusk he asks to be carried outside. Servants wrap him in bare fur, the terrace stones are cold as tomb lids. He watches a lone hawk circle above the Loire, wings tilted in perfect equilibrium. Tears freeze on his lashes. He whispers, "I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have," the confession that will echo through every biography, yet his eyes remain fixed on the hawk, as if apology is meant for earth but aspiration belongs to sky. The bird folds wings and stoops, disappearing into twilight. Leonardo's hand lifts, tracing its spiral, then falls, and conductor finishing a symphony only he can hear. Chapter 8, The Mirror That Forgot to Lie. Winter 1519. Ice thickens on the Loire until the river becomes a road. Leonardo's room smells of camphor and candle fat. He requests a mirror, large as a man, imported from Venice via mule and prayer. When it arrives he props it against the opposite wall and lies in bed watching his reflection age in real time, cheeks collapsing into geological layers, beard snow upon snow, ice to eclipses. He sketches himself on charcoal pinned to a board across his knees, left hand drawing, right hand drawing self, an infinite regression of observation. The image is frank, no angelic drapery, no courtly flattery, only time's chisel at work. He titles it simply, Me, while becoming not me. Melzi reads letters, from Giuliano de' Medici promising pensions, from Salai asking for money to buy land in Milan, from the king who weeps between sentences. Leonardo listens, then asks for silence so deep he can hear blood arguing with breath. He writes final notes in margins already crowded, a recipe for removing candle wax from parchment, a reminder to ask forgiveness of the swan whose wing I broke in childhood, a sketch of a child's top that spins so fast it becomes invisible, proof that joy, when sufficiently rapid, escapes sight and therefore death. He calls for music. A girl from the village brings a lute, her fingers stumble over frets polished by masters. He smiles, indicating she should continue. The cracked notes fill the room like birds with injured wings still trying to migrate. He closes his eyes and sees Florence at dusk, Arno reflecting first lantern sparks, hears Verrocchio scolding him for drawing shadows too dark. Memory layers upon memory until the present is a palimpsest where every era exists simultaneously. He whispers, "Time is a river that flows into itself," and the mirror shows the sentence leaving his lips like a ghost checking out of its own haunting. On April 23 he refuses food, saying digestion requires energy better spent on seeing. Francis visits, kneels, kisses the master's hand still stained by charcoal. Leonardo tries to speak but breath rattles like dice in a cup. Instead he raises 2 fingers, a benediction or a measurement of distance between worlds, then lets them fall. The king exits weeping. Courtiers swear the very mirror cracks a hairline, as if even glass grieves. Melzi sits vigil, reading aloud the old prophecy Leonardo once copied: the dying swan sings only when it realizes the lake was always an ocean. Outside, the first swallow returns, carving spring into sky with scissors of wing. He dies at the stroke of Ascension Day, bells across Amboise tolling 40 meters of rope that once hoist cathedral stone now hoisting a soul. Melzi closes the master's eyes, then opens the window so the room can empty itself into night. The mirror reflects an empty bed, yet for a moment the indentation remains, a silhouette of absence that weighs more than presence. Years later, when the manor is sold, the mirror will be moved. Workmen swear that for an instant they see charcoal dust hanging in air, sketching a spiral that smells of walnut oil and thunder. Chapter 9: The Notebooks That Refuse to Burn. May 1519. France mourns. Italy receives the news like a stone dropped into a well whose bottom is ambition. Leonardo's effects are catalogued: 5,000 pages, 72 mirrors, 41 mechanical models, 1 lute with silver strings green with age, the Mona Lisa wrapped in Florentine silk, a lock of hair possibly Caterina's, a human femur polished by handling. Melzi writes to Leonardo's half-brothers in Vinci offering inheritance. They reply demanding money, not manuscripts. It's hard to believe, but blood often fails where paper endures. Melzi transports the crates across Lake Maggiore by boat, storm clouds copying themselves onto water like sketches on carbon paper. Lightning illuminates pages so that, for instance, flying machines seem to lift off parchment, valves open and close like gills, the uterus glows as if pregnant with starlight. Melzi clutches the Mona Lisa to his chest, afraid the storm will steal her smile the way time steals everything else. He arrives at Vaprio Villa and begins the labor of love, organizing, copying, protecting. He titles the collection The Windsor Papers, though Windsor does not yet know it will host them, proof that destiny signs contracts in advance of real estate. Years pass. Salai visits, eyes bright with schemes to sell pages to the highest bidder. Melzi refuses, friendship sours into lawsuit. Salai dies young, ball wound in a duel over a woman and a forged Leonardo, carrying to grave secrets of pigments and petty thefts. Pages scatter. One of a cat's anatomy ends up blocking a mouse hole in a Milanese tavern, another, detailing a solar cooker, warms wine in a merchant's kitchen until the ink fades to illegibility. Each loss is a syllable removed from the last will of genius. Yet enough survives to haunt. Scholars copy copies, errors multiplying like whispered gossip. A Venetian printer publishes a treatise on painting, mangling Leonardo's mirror script into readable Italian, thereby making him comprehensible and therefore misunderstood. The book travels to England where court painters use it to paint portraits of monarchs who believe divinity is proportional to the length of the nose. Somewhere in margins, Leonardo's real voice, questioning, laughing, apologizing to a swan, sleeps waiting for better translators, not linguists, but lovers of uncertainty. Imagine the tension centuries later when Napoleon stores the notebooks in the Louvre, sleeps beside them the night before coronation, dreams of cannons that gallop like horses. Or when a German scholar in 1880 photographs every page with magnesium flashes that smell of burnt apricots, preserving light by sacrificing ink. Or when a Japanese surgeon in 1945, city flattened, reads Leonardo's heart drawings and repairs a child's valve using a technique sketched in 1512. Each resurrection is a reply to the dying confession, my work did not reach the quality it should have. The world answers collectively, it reached exactly the quality we needed, imperfect enough to keep us trying. Chapter 10: The Smile That Outlived the Canvas. Paris, today. The Mona Lisa hangs behind bulletproof glass, temperature calibrated to the breath of an idealized human. 6 million visitors a year queue like pilgrims to a relic that needs no miracle beyond persistence. Cameras flash, digital fireflies that die in the same instant they birth. No one is allowed to linger, security guards shuffle crowds forward, a human hourglass. Yet some swear that if you could stand long enough, her smile would begin to move, not in animation but in meaning, first maternal, then ironic, then aching like dawn over a battlefield, cycling through every emotion the human face has ever practiced in private. Scientists scan the panel with lasers, X-rays, infrared, discovering underpayments, columns that once framed her, a lap that once held a blanket, a second smile beneath the visible one, as if she practiced before committing to eternity. They measure craquelure, map pigment degradation, calculate the exact wattage of lead that will keep her alive another 5 centuries. They find Leonardo's fingerprints in the glaze, spirals of whorls that match the spirals of her hair, proof that identity leaks into creation the way soul leaks into flesh. It's hard to believe, but the most reproduced image on Earth is also the most singular. No copy captures the way her gaze follows absence, how she watches the space where you used to be before life subtracted you from yourself. Advertisers plaster her face on coffee mugs, condom packets, memes that replace her smile with emojis. She survives each indignity by refusing to comment, the way a mother refuses to scold a child who mispronounces love. Meanwhile, drones based on Leonardo's ornithopter design survey melting glacier, surgeons guided by his heart sketches transplant valves grown from human tissue, engineers build bridges whose arches quote the one he designed for the Sultan, finally erecting what politics once aborted. Every innovation carries a footnote in invisible ink, imagined by a man who never delivered on time, yet delivered beyond time. In the Louvre gift shop you can buy a 3D puzzle of the flying machine, assemble it with children who yawn and reach for phones. The plastic wings snap together without blood, without fever, without the weight of a man who watched hawks while dying. Yet somewhere between dining table and trash bin, a child pauses, feels imbalance in the way the toy tips, and intuits, without vocabulary, that flight requires surrender to fall. That child grows up to study aerospace, to calculate lift, to name her first drone Leonardo, unaware that inspiration entered through a souvenir mispriced at €12.99. One night each year the museum closes for maintenance. Guards turn off lights, motion sensors sleep. In that darkness the portrait breathes, canvas expanding a micrometer, varnish settling. If you could stand invisible, you might hear a whisper, "I was never Lisa." I am every glance that ever sought meaning in another's face. I am the question you ask when you dare not speak. I am the smile that survived the death of the smiler, the way music survives the piano's extinction. And you would leave understanding that Leonardo's greatest invention was not a device but a void shaped like a human where viewers insert themselves, a mirror that reflects not face but hunger. Closing summary, the river returns to the sky. We began beside an Arno spring, followed a boy who listened to mill wheels chewing time, who sketched flight while others feared comets, who painted women holding the universe in the corner of a smile. We walked through Florence's stone throat, Milan's iron ambition, Rome's incense politics, France's river mist, until we arrived here, wherever your listening finds you, carrying the same question Leonardo carried from womb to mirror: how do we make the temporary eternal without making it a tomb? He failed by every metric he valued, the bronze horse never galloped, the glider crashed, the parachute was never tested, the perfect anatomy never completed. Yet failure became a seed that sprouted in soil he would never tread. Every heart surgeon who saves a child, every drone that maps a flood, every bridge that arches toward reconciliation owes interest on a debt contracted in candlelit rooms where a man dissected wonder and found it identical to compassion. His true legacy is not the objects but the method: observe patiently, question respectfully, sketch obsessively, revise ruthlessly, and when the world says impossible, smile the way Lisa smiles, acknowledging the absurdity while continuing to paint. Imagine the tension inside every inventor who opens a notebook today: market pressures, grant deadlines, the terror of being first. Leonardo whispers across parchment, do not deliver what the patron demands, deliver what the century will need once the patron is dust. Sacrifice comfort, reputation, even completion, but never curiosity. Curiosity is the only empire that expands the more it is divided. He paid with loneliness, exile, fingers ink black at midnight, heart fluttering like a trapped sparrow. We pay with attention, cheaper than gold, dearer than blood. So what do we do with this man who owned nothing but notebooks, who carried a portrait across war zones because he could not let the world's ambiguity go unhung? Perhaps we forgive ourselves for unfinished symphonies, for novels half-written, for love declared imperfectly. Perhaps we look up from screens and watch swallows stitch sky to water, noting the angle of tail feathers, feeling the old tug in the chest that says flight is negotiation, not conquest. Perhaps we build bridges not to escape enemies but to invite them into the city of mutual breathing. Perhaps we paint, not to capture likeness, but to liberate the sitter from ever needing to be only oneself. History is not a ladder but a spiral. We return to the same questions at higher altitudes. Leonardo stands on each turn, holding a mirror that shows us older than we were but younger than we will be if we dare. The mirror does not lie, it simply refuses to flatter. It says, you will fail, you will die, you will be misunderstood, but the line you draw today may lift a child out of fire tomorrow. That is enough. That is everything. May we live as he lived, at the intersection of art and engineering, of muscle and miracle, knowing the wing will break but building it anyway, because the fall teaches the river how to recognize the sky. May we smile as Lisa smiles, not in superiority, not in secrecy, but in solidarity with every witness who stands before the void and chooses to sketch light into it. And when our own night arrives, may we raise 2 fingers in benediction or measurement, acknowledging the small distance between what was and what could still be. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you made it this far, you're the reason we keep going. Please subscribe and help us continue sharing these stories with the world.